He was just a janitor, until he played the guitar that shocked a billionaire. Nathan Whitmore, a billionaire real estate mogul, sat in his opulent mansion, eyeing the young men who dared to court his daughter Isabella. Every suitor had failed, not by lack of charm but by lack of proving themselves worthy. "Gentlemen," he declared, raising an antique guitar, a rare Gibson Les Paul gleaming under the chandelier, "if you can play this guitar, you may have my daughter's hand." Laughter filled the room. The wealthy men smirked, sure the challenge was impossible. Most were tone-deaf, some didn't even know how to hold a guitar. But in the corner, sweeping the marble floors, stood Marcus Johnson, the black janitor, a quiet man with a passion hidden behind humble work clothes. No one noticed him, but Marcus's hands lingered over the guitar. Isabella, curious, approached him. "You play?" she asked softly. Marcus shrugged, brushing his sleeves. "I play a little, but I don't think I should." Nathan overheard. "Nonsense, anyone can try." When Marcus picked up the guitar, the room fell silent. His fingers danced over the strings, producing a melody so electrifying it made the chandeliers quiver. The laughter turned to stunned silence. Nathan's eyebrow shot up. This janitor could play. Marcus cradled the guitar in his hands like it were an extension of himself, the polished wood reflecting the soft evening light streaming through the window. He had always found solace in music, a secret world where emotion had no barriers, where words could fail but a single note could speak volumes. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the billionaire's gaze on him, the curious eyes of Isabella observing him like a hawk, and the sneering smirks of the other suitors who had come expecting charm and wealth, but now realized they had nothing to offer beyond empty bravado. The first chord he struck resonated through the room, a mellow yet commanding sound that seemed to ripple through the air. It was simple, almost understated, but it carried a subtle intensity, like a quiet storm building behind his fingers. Marcus allowed himself to close his eyes for a fraction of a second, letting the music flow from years of secret practice, from nights when he had performed in dimly lit cafes where only a handful of strangers had listened, when applause had been replaced by polite nods, and when exhaustion had been the constant companion of a young man trying to balance school, work, and his relentless pursuit of his passion. With each strum, he poured himself into the melody, letting his emotions, joy, frustration, longing, and hope, intertwine with the vibrations of the strings. Isabella's eyes widened, a flicker of disbelief and wonder crossing her face. She had seen many suitors attempt to impress with flashy displays of wealth or practiced charm, but none had ever carried an aura of sincerity like Marcus did now. His fingers danced across the frets, delicate yet precise, as though he were conversing with the guitar in a language only they understood. The melody swelled and softened in turns, rising to passionate crescendos and falling into tender whispers that seemed to speak directly to her heart. Marcus had always played in secret, never for praise, never for recognition, and yet, as the notes filled the room, there was a vulnerability in his performance, an honesty that cut through pretense and left every listener raw and exposed. The other suitors shifted uncomfortably, their previous confidence crumbling with each chord, each note an unspoken indictment of their own superficiality. Nathan, the tallest and most confident of them who had mocked Marcus just moments before, now leaned forward slightly, brow furrowed, a trace of genuine curiosity in his eyes. He had expected arrogance, perhaps an amateurish display, but what Marcus offered was a truth he could not ignore. The music did not boast. It did not demand attention. It commanded respect. Marcus finished with a soft, lingering note that seemed to hang in the air, vibrating against the walls, and then, almost ceremoniously, he set the guitar down on its stand. He did not rush to claim applause, did not wait for accolades. "It's just music," he said quietly, almost apologetically, yet there was a firmness in his voice that betrayed the confidence beneath the humility. Isabella felt her chest tighten. She had always admired talent, but there was something more here, something that stirred a feeling she had not allowed herself to acknowledge. Marcus had a depth she had never encountered in her gilded world, a soul untouched by the superficiality she had grown accustomed to. Nathan, previously brimming with disdain, now looked skeptical, almost begrudgingly impressed. "Music, huh?" he said, crossing his arms. "You might just be serious about my daughter." Marcus met his gaze steadily, refusing to shrink under the billionaire's scrutiny. "I am," he admitted simply. "And not just about your daughter, about life, about doing what matters." The room fell silent again, the tension palpable. Nathan's eyes narrowed, not with anger but with analytical scrutiny. He had seen many men attempt to charm Isabella, many who had thought wealth and arrogance could sway her heart, but Marcus presented something different, something he could not control or manipulate. Seeking to assert authority, Nathan leaned forward slightly. "Proof," he demanded, voice deep and commanding. "I don't just hand over my daughter because someone can strum a guitar. What makes you different? Tell me something real. Show me your life beyond this performance." Marcus nodded, acknowledging the weight of the question. He took a deep breath, recalling nights spent in near-empty bars where he had played until his fingers bled, where the only applause came from a few loyal patrons or a bartender who offered a smile and a free drink. He thought of his childhood, the hours stolen from sleep and homework to perfect a skill that seemed to matter to no one but himself, of jobs that paid the bills while he chased an elusive dream that no one had believed in. "I've performed in countless small clubs," Marcus began, voice steady but layered with emotion. "No one knew me. No one will ever know most of those nights, but I learned something important. I learned to pour myself into something meaningful. I learned to persevere, to create something beautiful even when the world didn't notice. Music has been my refuge, my teacher, and my constant companion. I didn't play for fame or money. I played because I couldn't stop, because it was part of who I am." Isabella's eyes glimmered, tears threatening to spill as she absorbed every word. She realized then that Marcus's humility and honesty were inseparable from his talent. Here was someone who had lived and struggled and created without seeking reward, someone genuine, someone rare. Her heart had been drawn to him long before this moment, a silent pull she had never dared to acknowledge, fearing the impossibility of such a connection in her world of privilege and expectation. Marcus glanced at her briefly, catching the subtle acknowledgement in her gaze, a quiet smile touching his lips. It was a smile that spoke of understanding, of shared secrets, of unspoken recognition. Nathan studied Marcus for a long moment, the initial skepticism slowly giving way to grudging respect. There was a resilience here, a depth that no wealth or arrogance could replicate, and even he could not deny the appeal of that authenticity. The other suitors remained rigid, awkwardly attempting to maintain composure, yet it was clear they had lost before the competition had truly begun. Marcus had not only played music, he had revealed a truth that could not be faked, a talent and character that demanded acknowledgement. Isabella felt a rush of warmth, a mixture of pride and awe, and perhaps a budding hope that someone like Marcus could indeed exist in her world, someone untainted by greed or pretense, someone whose soul resonated with hers in ways she had only dreamed of. And in that charged, silent moment, the room seemed to shift. The past judgments, the shallow contests, the expectations of wealth and status faded into irrelevance. Marcus had spoken the language of sincerity, and it was a language Isabella recognized instantly. Her heart beat faster, not with infatuation alone, but with the profound realization that she had been waiting for this, a connection that transcended superficiality, a promise that authenticity could triumph in a world obsessed with appearances. Marcus leaned back slightly, the strain of his performance replaced by calm confidence. He did not seek approval, yet he had it in abundance, not from grand gestures but from the unspoken acknowledgement that he was someone extraordinary, someone who belonged in this world not by fortune or manipulation but by sheer truth. Nathan's eyes softened, a faint smile appearing as he studied Marcus, no longer entirely certain how to challenge him, while Isabella's gaze lingered, filled with admiration, curiosity, and a quiet, growing affection. The other suitors shifted uneasily, aware that they had been outclassed not by wealth or connections, but by talent, authenticity, and courage. And as the evening light dimmed and the room settled into a calm hush, Marcus realized something too, a quiet but unshakable certainty that he had found a place where he could not only be seen, but respected for who he truly was. Music had been his secret companion for years, but now, for the first time, it had become a bridge to something greater, a bridge to trust, to admiration, and perhaps even to love. Isabella's lips curved into a gentle smile, her heart stirring with emotions she could no longer deny, as Marcus quietly, humbly, yet confidently, picked up his guitar again, not to perform, but to continue sharing the essence of himself with the world that had finally begun to notice. And in that moment, the distance between social classes, expectations, and assumptions seemed to fade, leaving only the pure, undeniable truth of talent, courage, and sincerity, an invisible thread connecting two hearts in a world that often valued everything but the real, unadorned soul. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed as he studied Marcus, a mix of disbelief and appraisal crossing his features. He was a man accustomed to control, to power, to dictating every detail of the lives around him. Yet here was someone who had already challenged his expectations simply by being himself. "If you want my daughter," he said slowly, arms crossed over his tailored suit, voice deep and unyielding, "you'll have to play in front of everyone at my gala tomorrow night. No tricks, no excuses. No private performances. No hidden talents waiting in the shadows. If you can impress the world, then perhaps I'll consider you serious." Marcus nodded, his jaw set with quiet determination. There was no hesitation in his expression, only a calm confidence born of countless nights spent performing for strangers who might not even have been paying attention, for music that mattered more to him than applause or accolades. "I'll be there," he said simply. Nathaniel's gaze lingered, calculating. "You're taking a risk," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. The word spread like wildfire. By the following morning, the story of the janitor who could rock the mansion had ignited social media, gossip columns, and elite circles alike. Headlines screamed, "The janitor who could rock the mansion. Billionaire's daughter's secret admirer stuns with talent." And from mop to microphone, the man who played his way into high society. Some ridiculed him, calling him a novelty, a joke, or a fleeting sensation destined to be forgotten, but others were intrigued, drawn by the audacity of a man who dared to cross the invisible barrier between the working class and the glittering elite. Marcus remained unfazed by the chatter. He had no interest in fame, no desire to impress anyone beyond the simple truth of his music. Yet he understood the stakes. This was more than a performance. It was a declaration of who he was, a chance to show that authenticity could triumph over wealth, privilege, and expectation. The evening of the gala arrived, a glittering affair of crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors, and guests adorned in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. The room buzzed with anticipation, the air thick with perfume, champagne, and the soft hum of high society gossip. Isabella had secured a front row seat, her hands clasped nervously, her heart pounding in anticipation of what she already knew she would witness. Marcus stepped onto the grand stage, the spotlight illuminating him as he adjusted the strap of his guitar. The audience murmured, some stifling polite laughter at the notion of a janitor performing on a stage meant for celebrated musicians, others exchanging skeptical glances, their expressions a mix of curiosity and derision. Nathaniel watched from the edge of the room, arms still crossed, his eyes sharp, as though daring Marcus to falter. Marcus's fingers hovered over the strings for a heartbeat, and then he began. The first notes were gentle, tentative, yet imbued with a subtle power that immediately captured the attention of everyone present. There was an intimacy to the sound, a vulnerability that drew listeners in, making them lean forward unconsciously, as if they could hear the emotions that lay beneath each note. Slowly the music swelled, building in intensity and complexity, carrying a rhythm that was at once familiar and entirely new. Marcus's technique was flawless, yet it was his soul that shone through. The raw emotion, the fire, the passion that had been honed in countless nights of secret practice, in cafes where applause had been rare, in empty streets where he had poured himself into the melody until it became an extension of his very being. Isabella felt tears prick her eyes, her chest tightening with pride and awe. Every chord, every strum seemed to tell a story of perseverance, of honesty, of unshakable integrity. The high society elite, initially scoffing and exchanging smug whispers, began to fall silent. A few hardened critics who had come with pen and notebook poised to write scathing reviews found themselves unable to look away. Marcus was no mere performer. He was a force, a revelation, a man who commanded attention not through wealth or status, but through the undeniable power of his talent. The music soared and dipped, each movement deliberate yet fluid, like a conversation with the universe itself. Some guests instinctively rose to their feet, unable to contain their admiration. Even those who had doubted him could not deny what they were witnessing. A virtuoso, a soul laid bare for all to see, a man who had transformed a simple guitar into an instrument of truth. Nathaniel's expression remained stoic, but the faintest twitch of his eyebrow betrayed his astonishment. He had underestimated Marcus, assumed that charm alone could not measure up to talent, yet here was irrefutable proof. Marcus finished with a final, lingering note, the sound reverberating through the grand hall and leaving a palpable hush in its wake. He did not bow, did not demand recognition, only allowed the silence to honor the performance itself. Then, slowly, applause erupted, hesitant at first, then swelling into a thunderous ovation that echoed against the marble walls. Isabella's hands flew to her mouth in disbelief, her eyes shining with tears of admiration and joy. Marcus turned toward her, offering a small, humble smile that conveyed both gratitude and a quiet acknowledgement of her presence. It was not a show of vanity. It was a moment of connection, a silent conversation that only they understood. The other suitors slumped in their seats, their earlier confidence dissolved, replaced by embarrassment and envy. They had relied on wealth, charm, and superficiality, but Marcus had shattered their assumptions with authenticity, humility, and extraordinary talent. Even the most cynical critics found themselves clapping, some rising to offer standing ovations, compelled by the sincerity and brilliance of what they had just witnessed. Nathaniel finally allowed a slow nod, his arms uncrossing, his posture relaxing ever so slightly. The test was over. Marcus had not only played music, he had conveyed character, heart, and integrity in a way that no words or social standing could replicate. Isabella rose to her feet, her applause merging with the rest of the crowd, yet her gaze remained fixed on Marcus, the admiration in her eyes mingling with something deeper, a recognition of the man he truly was. Marcus stepped down from the stage, the weight of the performance replaced by quiet relief, yet his heart still raced with exhilaration. He had faced scrutiny, judgment, and expectation, and had emerged unbroken, authentic, and undeniable. Nathaniel approached, his expression measured but with a hint of respect that had been absent before. "You've impressed everyone tonight," he admitted, voice firm but not unkind. "Even me, that was extraordinary." Marcus inclined his head, the humility in his gesture genuine. "Thank you," he said simply. "I just play what I feel, that's all I can do." Isabella reached out to him, her fingers brushing his arm, a silent affirmation of the bond that had grown between them. She had witnessed courage, talent, and sincerity triumph over prejudice, expectation, and skepticism. Marcus had proven himself not through words or wealth, but through the one thing that mattered most, truth expressed through his art. And as the gala continued around them, a celebration of status and spectacle, the quiet, undeniable connection between Marcus and Isabella remained, unspoken yet profound, a promise that the heart often recognizes what the world may try to obscure. Marcus's performance had been more than music. It had been a declaration, a revelation, a bridge between worlds. And in that glittering hall of opulence, where power and wealth usually dictated worth, it was authenticity and talent that had reigned supreme, forever altering the perception of those who had once doubted, and igniting hope in the hearts of those who had been waiting for someone extraordinary to emerge. The echoes of applause still lingered in the grand hall as Marcus stepped down from the stage, the final note of his performance vibrating in his chest and in the hearts of the audience. Every eye had been on him, every whisper had momentarily stopped, replaced by an almost reverent silence, and now the reactions were pouring in. Some were tentative claps that grew louder, while others were gasps of disbelief, murmurs spreading like wildfire. "Did you see that? He's incredible." The janitor played like a world-class musician. "I never thought." Yet the whispers weren't just about astonishment. They carried a subtle shift, a grudging respect mingled with awe. Marcus's own heart raced, not from pride but from relief. He had played not for fame or for the approval of the elite, but because it was who he was, because music had always been the bridge between his soul and the world. Isabella's eyes glimmered in the front row, shining with admiration and an unspoken joy. He had not only played music, he had revealed his essence, raw and unfiltered, and she had felt it in every fiber of her being. Nathaniel, still standing near the edge of the stage, watched Marcus intently. The stern lines of his face softened ever so slightly as he processed what had just occurred. He was a man who had built his life on control, power, and precision, accustomed to commanding respect through wealth and influence. Yet here was someone who had earned respect through entirely different means, through dedication, humility, and undeniable talent. For a moment, Nathaniel said nothing, his mind replaying every note, every gesture, every quiet confidence Marcus had exhibited. The room had been full of judgment, of assumptions about who belonged and who did not, yet Marcus had shattered every expectation. Slowly, he approached Marcus, each step deliberate, measured, carrying the weight of someone still reconciling surprise with admiration. "I didn't think anyone could do it," he admitted, voice low but sincere, betraying a hint of vulnerability beneath the customary authority he wore like armor. "I didn't think someone without fame, wealth, or pedigree could stand in front of my guests and command the room, earn their attention, and move them the way you did, but you've earned my respect." Marcus looked up at Nathaniel, eyes calm and unwavering, a small, modest smile forming on his lips. There was no triumph in his expression, only quiet acknowledgement. "Thank you, sir," he said. "I don't need your permission, though. I play because it's who I am. That's enough for me." Nathaniel paused, a slight nod acknowledging the courage and confidence it took to speak such a truth in a world so often ruled by appearances. He realized, with a growing awareness that perhaps had been absent in his own life, that Marcus embodied something money and influence could never buy. Dedication that transcended convenience, talent honed with patience and sacrifice, and integrity so unwavering it could command attention without demanding it. Marcus had faced skepticism, mockery, and high society elitism, and had emerged not only unscathed but elevated, proving that character and ability could triumph where privilege alone could not. Nathaniel studied him closely, noting the quiet strength in his posture, the humility that did not compromise confidence, and the way Isabella's admiration for him seemed to radiate like sunlight in the front row. The billionaire's demeanor softened, a rare, almost imperceptible warmth appearing in his eyes. He had judged Marcus as an outsider, a man from a world far removed from wealth and influence, yet he had proven that authenticity carried a power the elite could not manufacture. "Then, Marcus," Nathaniel said, voice steadier now, carrying the weight of authority and the recognition of genuine worth, "if you truly care for Isabella, you may have my blessing." The words were simple, yet monumental, the culmination of skepticism, judgment, and testing giving way to acceptance. Marcus inclined his head, a humble acknowledgement, though inside he felt a surge of quiet triumph. He had not sought validation from Nathaniel, but this acknowledgement signified that honesty and talent could break even the hardest barriers. Isabella's heart swelled as she watched the exchange, a mixture of relief, joy, and deep admiration washing over her. For years, she had been surrounded by men who sought her for status or wealth, empty gestures meant to impress. Here was Marcus, a man whose worth was measured not by his social standing, but by his heart, his passion, and the unwavering integrity he carried in everything he did. Around the room, the elite whispered among themselves. The snickers and condescending smiles that had marked the beginning of the evening were replaced by subdued nods and murmurs of acknowledgement. Even those who had mocked Marcus now realized the uncomfortable truth. Greatness, true greatness, often comes from unexpected places. Wealth and social position could not manufacture the kind of brilliance and authenticity he had displayed. Some leaned forward, exchanging cautious glances, recognizing that the man they had dismissed as a janitor had not only challenged social norms but had shattered assumptions about talent, determination, and worth. Marcus stepped down fully from the stage, mingling seamlessly among the guests, yet without a trace of arrogance. He greeted those who offered congratulations with a quiet, appreciative smile, never boasting, never demanding recognition, simply allowing his work and character to speak for themselves. Isabella reached out, her hand brushing his arm in a gesture that spoke volumes: gratitude, admiration, and something more, a connection that had been strengthened through shared experience and mutual recognition of each other's authenticity. Nathaniel watched this quietly, a small, approving nod acknowledging the bond that had formed. He understood in his own way that Marcus's success was more than performance. It was proof that integrity, talent, and perseverance could command respect even in a world built on wealth and pretense. The whispers continued, subtle but growing in weight. "He's remarkable. I underestimated him. Who would have thought someone from outside our world could leave such an impression?" For many, it was a lesson learned the hard way. Do not judge by appearance. Do not dismiss talent because it comes from an unexpected source. In this moment, social boundaries, class prejudices, and assumptions of entitlement seemed to dissolve in the presence of authenticity and skill. Marcus remained steady, calm, and centered, embodying the truth he had lived by all his life. That one's worth is measured not by status, but by action, character, and courage. Isabella's eyes remained fixed on him, admiration turning to quiet affection, understanding, and hope. She realized that Marcus had broken more than just societal expectations. He had broken into the very essence of what she valued, revealing a man whose depth of soul could not be measured in money, power, or connections. Nathaniel, finally, allowed himself a small, rare smile. It was a smile that carried acknowledgement, acceptance, and perhaps even pride. He had tested Marcus, challenged him, and observed him under scrutiny, only to find that this man, humble and true, was worthy of not just Isabella's attention, but of respect that transcended class and convention. The gala continued around them, champagne flowing, music playing, and guests conversing, yet the shift was palpable. Marcus had left an indelible mark on everyone present, reminding them that authenticity cannot be faked, that courage and talent can break barriers, and that greatness often resides where least expected. And as Marcus and Isabella shared a quiet, unspoken moment amidst the glittering chaos of the elite gathering, it became clear that something extraordinary had begun. A connection founded on admiration, trust, and shared recognition of the values money could not purchase. Nathaniel approached Isabella briefly, a subtle nod signaling his approval, while Marcus watched the room with quiet confidence, knowing that his life had taken a turn not through luck or inheritance, but through the power of truth, talent, and the courage to remain himself. In that glittering hall of privilege, Marcus had proven that the human spirit, when guided by passion and integrity, can transcend social barriers, ignite admiration, and earn respect in ways that no amount of wealth or influence could ever achieve. And as whispers continued, some awed, some humbled, it became evident to all present that they had witnessed more than a performance. They had witnessed the breaking of barriers, the triumph of authenticity, and the beginning of a story that would be remembered long after the gala lights dimmed. The mansion gardens were bathed in soft moonlight, the fountains glinting silver in the night, and the gentle rustle of leaves providing a subtle accompaniment to the quiet murmurs of the evening. Marcus and Isabella walked side by side along the marble pathways, their hands intertwined, fingers laced in a silent promise that spoke louder than words. Every step seemed lighter, freer, as though the approval of Nathaniel, the former skepticism of the elite, and the judgment of society had all melted away, leaving only the purity of their connection. Marcus's heart swelled not from triumph, but from the simple, undeniable truth that he could finally walk openly with Isabella, unafraid, unashamed, and wholly accepted for who he was. Isabella glanced at him, eyes shimmering in the soft light, a quiet smile gracing her lips. "I can't believe this is real," she murmured, her voice barely above the sound of the night air. "I mean, you here accepted by everyone, it's like a dream." Marcus shook his head, a small chuckle escaping him. "It's not a dream, it's just life being honest, showing who you are and not pretending to be someone else to impress anyone. That's all." He squeezed her hand gently, the warmth and steadiness of his touch grounding her. They paused near a reflecting pool, the moonlight dancing on the water's surface, creating ripples that mirrored the rhythm of Marcus's calm but excited heartbeat. Isabella looked at him, studying the man who had captured her admiration, respect, and quietly her heart. There was a depth to him, a consistency, a rare alignment of talent, humility, and integrity that she had never seen in anyone else. The mansion, a symbol of wealth, power, and unyielding social expectation, now seemed almost secondary to the quiet intimacy they shared amidst the meticulously curated gardens. Word of Marcus's extraordinary performance had spread beyond the walls of the mansion, infiltrating the pages of glossy magazines, social media feeds, and even casual dinner conversations among high society and common folk alike. Headlines blared, "The Janitor Who Conquered the Gala," "Unexpected Talent Shakes Elite Circles," and "Marcus, Proof That Passion and Integrity Transcend Wealth." Some still scoffed, attempting to belittle his achievements with condescending remarks, but the tide of admiration and inspiration could not be denied. Marcus had become more than a performer. He was a symbol, a living testament that talent, dedication, and authenticity could not be measured by outward appearances, social class, or financial status. And yet, Marcus cared little for the accolades themselves. For him, the recognition was secondary to the fact that he could share his gift, be true to himself, and connect with others on a level that mattered far deeper than society's superficial judgments. Isabella's hand remained in his, grounding him in the present, anchoring him to a love that was genuine, earned, and mutual. The night air carried the faint scent of jasmine and roses, mingling with the gentle strains of music that seemed to echo from somewhere within the gardens, or perhaps from the heart of the universe itself. Marcus set his guitar case down beside a stone bench beneath an ancient oak tree, its branches stretched wide like protective arms over the path. He lifted the guitar with practiced ease and began to strum, the first notes gentle, tentative, but carrying the same passion and soul that had earned him recognition and respect earlier. Isabella sat beside him, leaning close, letting the music envelop them both. The melody was tender, expressive, and profoundly intimate, weaving a narrative that spoke of gratitude, hope, and the triumph of authenticity over prejudice. It was a song that had no audience beyond the two of them, yet it carried the weight of all the struggles, late nights, and sacrifices Marcus had endured to perfect his craft. The notes shimmered in the night, reflecting in Isabella's eyes, and for a moment the rest of the world, the gossip, the judgment, the barriers, faded away. It was just them, the moon, the stars, and the unspoken harmony that had grown between their souls. Marcus's fingers danced over the strings, coaxing from the guitar melodies that seemed almost to float in the air, tender yet commanding, soft yet bold. Every chord was imbued with emotion, every strum a story of resilience, every pause a breath of understanding. Isabella listened, her chest tightening with admiration and her heart swelling with love. In that music, she recognized everything she had felt for him: respect for his unwavering integrity, awe at his talent, and the quiet, growing certainty that this was someone she wanted by her side, not for wealth, not for status, but for the man he truly was. Marcus looked at her mid-song, catching her gaze, and for a brief moment, words were unnecessary. The music itself spoke volumes. It conveyed everything he felt, everything he had lived for, and everything he hoped to share in their life together. Outside the gardens, the world continued its ceaseless chatter, yet here, in this quiet sanctuary, barriers, social, economic, and emotional, had been dismantled. They had both crossed a threshold, one that was neither marked by wealth nor societal approval, but by the courage to be authentic and the willingness to embrace love fully, without reservation. As the final notes of his guitar faded into the night, Marcus laid the instrument gently beside him, letting the silence that followed resonate as profoundly as the music itself. Isabella reached over and rested her head on his shoulder, letting the warmth of his presence soothe her, reassure her, and anchor her to a reality that felt more wonderful than any fantasy. "You make the world feel lighter," she whispered. "Better, more honest." Marcus smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I think the world just needed someone to remind it that authenticity matters, that love matters, that talent matters when it comes from the heart." Isabella looked up at him, eyes shining with quiet tears of joy and certainty. "And you matter," she said simply. "More than anyone I've ever known." They remained like that for a long time, the stars above them twinkling as if in quiet approval, the soft night air embracing them, and the world beyond the gardens temporarily forgotten. In that moment, Marcus and Isabella found something rare and enduring: harmony. Not just in music, but in life, in values, in love. It was a harmony built on mutual respect, shared admiration, and the understanding that true greatness is measured not by wealth, power, or privilege, but by integrity, courage, and the willingness to be wholly oneself. Word of their story continued to ripple outward, inspiring countless people who had felt overlooked, underestimated, or confined by society's rigid expectations. Marcus had become a symbol, proof that talent and heart could break barriers, that authenticity could command respect, and that love founded on mutual recognition of worth could transcend any obstacle. The garden was quiet now, save for the soft strumming of the guitar that lingered in the air like a promise. Marcus played melodies that spoke of hope, perseverance, and the unshakable bond that had formed between them. Isabella rested beside him, her hand in his, her heart aligned with the rhythm of his music, and together they created a life that celebrated the beauty of honesty, the power of dedication, and the joy of a love untainted by pretense or expectation. And as the night deepened, and the stars twinkled above them like silent witnesses, Marcus and Isabella knew that they had found something rare, enduring, and profoundly beautiful. A harmony that would carry them forward, unbroken, unshakable, and infinitely precious. A life where respect, passion, and love triumphed over mockery, privilege, and doubt. In that harmony, they had discovered not just music, but the extraordinary rhythm of life itself, one that promised fulfillment, joy, and a love that would endure every test, every challenge, and every whisper of skepticism the world might offer.